Rome didn't fall to a stronger army. It opened its own gates and let the end walk right in. The greatest empire the world had ever seen wasn't conquered in a day. It bled out, slowly, over a century of spectacularly bad decisions. This is how Rome actually fell. By the 300s AD, Rome was simply too big. Its borders ran from the cold of Britain to the deserts of the east, and there were never enough soldiers to hold them. So the empire split into two, east and west, each half with its own emperor, each watching the other. And to fill the ranks of its armies, Rome did something quietly fatal. It filled them with the very barbarians it was supposed to be keeping out. Then, far to the east, the dominoes began to fall. Out of the steppe came the Huns, ferocious horse archers who fought like nothing Rome had ever seen. They didn't attack Rome directly. They did something worse. They terrified everyone into running straight at it. One of those fleeing peoples was the Goths. In the year 376, tens of thousands of them, warriors, women, and children, piled on the banks of the Danube, Rome's great border river, begging to be let in. And Rome said yes. More people meant more taxpayers and more recruits. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Because the local Roman officials were monsters. They let the refugees starve and then sold them dog meat at the going rate of one dog for one child sold into slavery. So the Goths did what any betrayed, desperate, armed people would do. They revolted, and just like that, there was an enemy army loose inside the empire. In the year 378, the Eastern Emperor Valens marched out to crush them. He was jealous. His young nephew had been winning glory, and Valens wanted some of his own. So when he fought the Goths camped behind a great ring of wagons, he didn't wait for the reinforcements already on their way. He attacked. In the August heat, with tired, thirsty men. It was a massacre of the Romans. The Gothic cavalry away from the camp came thundering back and smashed into the Roman flank. The legions were crushed together so tightly they couldn't even raise their swords to swing. 2/3 of the Eastern army died in that field, and the emperor himself simply vanished, carried wounded, the story goes, into a little farmhouse, which the Goths then burned to the ground, never knowing he was inside. This was the Battle of Adrianople, and the most valuable thing Rome lost that day wasn't an army or even an emperor. It was the myth, the idea that Rome could not be beaten. Rome limped on for another generation the only way it could, by hiring barbarians to fight other barbarians, until in the year 410, the unthinkable finally happened. A Gothic king named Alaric brought his army to the gates of Rome itself. He didn't have to break them down. The gates simply opened from the inside. Someone let them in. And for the first time in nearly 800 years, the city of Rome was sacked. A monk named Jerome wrote in shock, "The city which had taken the whole world was itself taken." And where was the Western Emperor while his eternal city burned? His name was Honorius, and he was hiding in a fortress out in the swamps. When a servant rushed in crying, "Rome has perished," Honorius panicked because, as the story goes, he owned a pet chicken, and he also named Roma. He was genuinely, deeply relieved to learn that it was only the city that was gone and not his bird. And it kept getting worse. 45 years later, another people, the Vandals, sacked Rome all over again. So thoroughly and so gleefully that to this day we call senseless destruction vandalism after them. Even Attila the Hun, the warlord they called the Scourge of God, came riding for the empire and was talked into turning around, legend says, by a single unarmed pope standing alone in the middle of the road. But by now, the West was only a shell. Its provinces had quietly broken away into barbarian kingdoms, one by one. And the real ending, when it finally came, wasn't a battle at all, it was paperwork. In the year 476, a barbarian general named Honorius deposed the last Western Roman emperor. He didn't execute him. He didn't think he was even worth it. He simply pensioned the boy off to a country villa, took the crown, and mailed it east to Constantinople with a message, the West doesn't need an emperor anymore. And that last emperor of Rome, he was a teenage boy. His name was Romulus Augustulus. Rome had been founded 1,200 years before by a Romulus and made into an empire by an Augustus, and it died on both of their names. The eastern half would live on for another 1,000 years, but in the west, the lights didn't go out all at once. They flickered and dimmed across a century of letting the wrong people in and trusting the wrong men. Rome, the city that once ruled the entire world, didn't explode, it just stopped. If you like history's slow motion train wrecks, subscribe. Trust me, there are a lot of them. Thanks for watching.